Who wants to give me a recap?
I had shit tons of computer issues.
That was true.
No.
I briefly recall that we were in the wild magic zone. And at one point we came upon some... I don't know.
Yeah, you were in a dead magic zone.
Yeah.
And a snowstorm had started, and in the night you were attacked by a werewolf-like creature that I believe T-Hole identified as a Wendigo. But it was actually there mostly just to get food. So when it managed to kill the donkey, and the donkey was light enough for it to lift up and carry off, that's really all it wanted. So it ran off into the snow with Hellweir following, but Hellweir doesn't have dark vision, so couldn't follow him much beyond the firelight. Then in the morning, Kajika decided to try to help stealthily lead the group away, but he did not roll well. And so I decided, whatever, the Wendigo comes back. There was good food here last night. That time the Wendigo managed to knock Hellweir out, but you killed him before anything unfortunate happened to Hellweir, so he popped back up. You then made your way along the road. After a couple of days, T-Hole remembered that when the road was originally being built, he had caches of supplies hidden away on the side of the road. But this road was built like 1,000 years ago. So at this point, pretty much all of those supplies had been rooted out by other travelers. But just by tradition, these became campsites and then were eventually built up into very nice homes because T-Hole rolled really well on his history check to remember these things. So you actually had some swanky rest stops to stay in on the rest of the road to Montvert. When you got to Montvert, you were essentially kept in the outer district, the travelers district, because you need to be a citizen and have paperwork to get to the inner districts. You had word sent via messenger to Dom Petronio, Daggerface's patron. You then used magic to contact the Duke of Calabria, and then settled into a bar.
Before we entered the city, we had the Hobgoblin talk to Kajika.
That's true. I forgot.
Yeah.
On your way there, you encountered a Hobgoblin ambassador who was out on a hunt. And he stopped to talk to Kajika for a bit. And he actually pointed out first, now that I think about it, that people in the town already knew who you were because they had heard about your fighting the demon in Watchtower. He then noted with some disgust that Kajika was traveling with a party full of basically old men. And why this young, vital hobgoblin was traveling with the old man party was a little baffling to him.
And I think Hellweir and T-Hole had they could understand him, but they didn't give off any clues.
Not Hellweir.
Darius could understand him, and then T-Hole cast comprehend languages.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's not, spellcasting is not super stealthy, so he was probably aware that he was being listened to by others after you cast that. But he noted that you were, a bunch of old men and a hobgoblin, and then reminded Kajika that he probably would have to, if he was going to be dealing with people in court, which the ambassador assumed he would, he was probably going to have to give up his weapons at some point. But then you went into the town and sent off your messages. You were waiting in a tavern or an inn, and the crowd at that point recognized you. Actually, I guess before you got to the inn, you were accosted by Kamai, the mother of the king, who was seeking your help because she hadn't been able to have any access to either of her two children for about a decade now. Hellweir pushed her down into the mud and didn't really care about her plight. Lucirosi was strangely silent through all of this.
right? Take a ditch, pull her out of the mud.
Right. Mike was probably cursing at his computer very loudly. But
that's probably around the time they started hitting it.
But he wasn't reacting to Hellweir at that point. So she said if you change your mind, she told you where you could find her. And after she admitted that it was a whorehouse, they just told her that they would send Lucia Rossi around. Then you went to the inn. The crowds recognized you, so they started to press in, very interested to see these people who had defeated a demon. So to shut them up, Zarius cast silence on the room, but most people are not that familiar with magic, so they thought he had just struck them all deaf, and they panicked and started trampling one another. At that point, Lucia Rossi finally came out of his stupor. And moved into the crowd to try to calm them down and save the people who had gotten injured. There was some shopping that then got done, and when the shopping had ended, you came back and there was a messenger from Dom Petronio ready with paperwork to get you into the city and then lead you to Dom Petronio's compound. Getting there, it's a fairly nice mansion in the central district of the city. Dom Petronio explained that he and originally Lokexicus, but then he went in and added some more detail, prepared a bunch of dossiers on all of the major players at court that they think you might want to talk to off the top of their head. Obviously, there might be other people you'll think of to talk to. But his advice was that you try to convince the privy councilors first, so that then they will give advice to the king, who can then who will make the final decision on whether or not you can access the door. He mentioned that the door is probably in one of the palaces of the king, and given that the most secure of those palaces was recently put on higher alert, he thinks that's probably where they're hiding the door. Though he hasn't seen it and doesn't have any direct information on that point. He also would have added, I don't remember if I put it in there, but he would have added that he'd advise you not tell people that Daggerface is the key to opening the door, because nobody knows how to open the door at this point. That's why they had to chop a whole section of wall out to move it. And if they find out it's as easy as to let this guy do it, they might decide they don't need you.
Yeah.
But he sort of leaves that up to you. His advice, he knows, and there is in the dossier, some people think maybe the kingdom should be looking to gain some advantage here for itself. And if they know how to open the door, it becomes that much easier for the kingdom to send their own people and not send you guys.
Mm.
But
before we do anything else, Don Petronio then excused himself. He did ask Daggerface to come with him so that he could catch up with Daggerface. And a little while later, Kajika excused himself and went off to do his business. And I need Kajika to roll me a deception check.
Crap.
Sorry, you're good at these.
Yeah, that's what I tell myself. Yes.
So the ambassador looks down at you and squints his eyes a bit and says, "What exactly is your mission here?"
Well, I'm trying to get through this door they got.
Right, but how exactly does that benefit the Hob?
Well, we can get on the other side of that door. I can find out what's going on.
I think we have some knowledge of what's going on behind the door. We're going to have a little bit of a problem here. I understand secrecy is important. I agree that secrecy is important, but I really need to know the specifics of your mission. This is a key time in the development of our nation. At the very least, I think maybe I'm going to have to ask you to give me back that potion. And then he looks over your shoulder and yells, this is all in Goblin, but he yells, "Alert one!" And you hear there's a bunch of commotion outside as he yells that.
Okay.
You by yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. Have fun.
Okay. I give him back the potion. I'm not worried. I mean,
So tell me, what were your specific orders?
who are you? What orders are from? Who are you talking about?
You're a Grammaton monk, correct?
That is correct, Ambassador.
You have a superior officer, correct?
Technically, yes, Ambassador. Yes.
Now, you're a Grammaton monk in service to the Hob with a superior officer. What orders were you given that led you to come in here to try to access this door?
Well, you see, I'm sort of, I'm sort of on sabbatical from the Grammaton monks, so I didn't really get any orders.
What sort of nonsense is it? What the fuck is a sabbatical from the Grammaton monks?
Well, it seems, Ambassador, you're not familiar with some of the lingo. But I assure you, whatever I find behind that door, I will pass on to you. So, to help the theocracy get the advantage.
Okay, make me a persuasion check.
Oh, yeah, I'm awesome at those. This is not the character that's good at persuasion. Oh, yeah.
So he leans forward. He is he's physically bigger than you. I mean, if to the observer who didn't know any better, you would not realize that you and he were the same species because you look so different. But he leans in and says, as of right now, I am recalling you from your sabbatical. You can go through the door if you wish, but this is an order. You will not share any of the things you find with the nation of Longspear or their allies. Only with the Hob. Do you understand your orders?
Well, I guess so.
That is not exactly the resounding yes I was looking for.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, what do you mean, whatever I find?
I
Are we
mean,
talking about information or items or whatnot?
anything of any military value. I intend for you to go in there and do your service to the Hob to the best of your ability. That includes reining in any antics from your stupid giant friend.
Well, I think those antics probably will take care of themselves.
Maybe, but I don't need him messing anything up any more than I need you and your friends doing it. You're putting me in an awkward situation, son. I do want to find a reason to support your going into that place. But now you've got me all concerned that maybe that's not the wisest thing for our nation.
Well, who else is going to go in there?
Well, right now, nobody's going to go in there because nobody knows how to open the door.
There you go.
My guess is that you guys do. And we got plans in motion, son. Plans that I am no longer comfortable talking about in front of you. And I don't need you queering our plans by bringing shit out of there that's going to make my job that much harder.
Fair enough.
If you want to send your giant friend to me to talk, that's fine. But you remember, you are under orders to do service to the Hob while you are in there, son. And I expect a full report when you get back. I will probably send you back to Valserat afterwards. So make sure that you're ready to leave when you come back to see me again.
Do I know? Oh, okay. Valserat. Well, we might have some things to discuss when I get back. There's certain complications about going back there, but we'll talk about that later.
I'm sure we will. You can feel free to show yourself out.
All right. And I get up and leave.
And as you open the door to exit, you see the hallway is now lined with soldiers in armor, essentially forming just a wall of hobgoblins between you and the main entrance to this building.
Okay.
But you then leave.
I knew it threw him off. I couldn't figure out my accent in the beginning. That's totally.
So the rest of you, Kajika will, the embassy for the hobgoblins is not that far away from where Don Petronio lives. So a few minutes later, you reappear back at that estate, and you're let through the gates, through the walls again, and you see this fairly. It's not certainly not the biggest home in the city, but it's pretty nice by any normal person standards. And you go back into the room where your friends are waiting.
Okay. Do I see Lady Kana?
You're not sure where Calabria's estate is. You could definitely find it. So plenty of people know where it is and could show you where it is. But
Okay.
Contadina, she would be in just a different building.
Okay. Well, I'm just happy that the Duke is actually letting me come in the house, so that's good. I don't have to stand outside.
No, you don't have to stand outside.
Okay.
Well, you're not in. Just to be clear, you're not in Calabria's house. You're in Don Petronio's house.
Okay.
Don
Okay.
Petronio's the dwarf.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. That would make sense. That would make more sense.
So now he's back with you all, and you can decide what you want to do.
Just looking through all of the papers that that Petronio gave us.
Yeah.
Just like put down a piece of paper and point to the name Ebenclad Brotherhood. I believe this to be our easiest route.
Easy and righteous are seldom the same, Zarius. We should try to avoid dealing with those, especially if, let's say for once that I would agree to work with some kind of criminal organization. If we were to be discovered, that would create a lot of very powerful enemies in this court. I think if we were to explore that, it might be best to use them as a last resort. Plus, it seems that they would expect quite high fees for any services that they would provide.
I do not trust in our chances of persuasion. People do not tend to like us.
And at that point, you see Luciosi kind of wearily like going like this and putting the dossiers down, and he says, "Yeah, this matters of court are the most frustrating things to have to deal with.
So let us bypass the court."
But despite that, I think that without persuasion, which clearly our group of misfits is not going to be able to accomplish very well, since from my perspective, we don't have the gift of gab.
Well,
At least not the persuasive kind.
Well, surely.
And he looks at T-Hole at that.
Surely the council listened to the emperor.
They would. That's why we should talk to the Imperial Ambassador, Semronius Gloranthius. He, of all people, will be able to see or understand that his emperor is calling him to do him a solid.
When has this worked in the past?
This is the first time for everything.
Hellweir chimes in to say, we should seek an audience with the king. Then I will cut off his head and ears, and I will be king.
No.
Drink your orange juice.
Those are rules in the Empire, not in this kingdom, unfortunately. Things were only so simple.
So, as I was saying, we're not going to be persuading anybody. I barely have confidence in our ability to keep any kind of secrets from these people, as information is quite valuable, and we must be discreet in what we share. And I'm not sure that we could even accomplish that. But one thing I think we can accomplish and be good at is what we do best: investigating and solving problems. Now, there are a few people in these dossiers that seem to be having difficulties. People in positions of power that would then likely be in the position to provide favors. Specifically, the Duchess Berenguer, her partner, and some of her family seem to be quite ill, and it is resistant to the magic of the clerics. If we were to be able to solve this problem, she might be in just the position that we need to gain the audience and favor of the king. Additionally, we've already seen that demons had invaded Watchtower. And so I am a little leery of the High Countess Humbert. She was previously ill, and the clerics and healers claim that she's no longer physically unwell, but she still believes that there is something causing her some kind of sickness. Now, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but if a demon put themselves in a position of authority in Watchtower, it would not be beyond reason to suspect that they would have done the same here, or are at least attempting to. So those are two avenues that I think would provide us some clear inroads to the king's favor, and at the same time utilize our strengths while mitigating our need to actually engage in the political garbage of the court.
Why wouldn't you want to talk to Hanaleh bin Shafaz? She seems right up your alley. Asimar, female, holy. surely you could surely her and you would have at least have a couple things in common to have her bring her on our side.
T-Hole, my kind, as far as I can understand, we don't share any kind of cultural heritage such as Kajika here does with the Hob, or you do with your humans of the Empire. There is no particular relationship simply because of our blood. That being said, Lucirosi then looks back into the dossier. She seems to be a little low on the totem pole, given that she is an ambassador. It would be better, as Don Petronio said, to try and influence those in the Privy Council. Certainly, if our other efforts fail, it might be worth trying, at least. I also find the Archbishop Razor Tongue to be somebody that I could get along with and relate to well. He seems to have similar ideas to mine with regards to Asheros and the righteousness of certain decisions within the state.
Do we want to just go through our list here and just kind of say yay or nay and decide whether that's somebody we want to talk to or not? Or I mean, that might be kind of tedious, but
we could do that. I mean, even our characters could do that too.
Yeah, I mean that's.
I thought he was in Kajika, like Kajika was saying that.
Oh, sorry.
Lucirosi goes back to his dossier. All right, so the first name is the king. Obviously, it would be nice to be able to gain audience with the king and sway his favor, but I don't think the Lord Protector would appreciate us going over his head, given their relationship.
So when it says he commands the Long Spear military, that's like the whole military? Like he is the guy?
Yes, he is the commander-in-chief, basically, of the entire military.
Gotcha.
Although, yeah, it's still a feudal system, particularly in long spears, so it does get to be a little complicated. Like he bosses around all the lords in the land who wind up raising the army.
Okay.
But yeah, he will be the sort of chief general officer if there were a war.
Well, we might want to talk to him.
I agree. That would be my first choice if we didn't rank so low on his priorities. Based on this dossier, it says that he's placing a lot of energy elsewhere, and it doesn't seem like he's engaged very much in the door. In fact, the door to him seems quite trivial.
Who is this?
Lord Protector, Grand Duke Dom Taurus Cinderholm Cole.
Why do these people enjoy so many names?
Makes them feel important.
Yeah, mostly. I would agree with that sentiment.
I know Don Petronio said we should start with the privy councilors. But methinks that everybody would start with the privy councilors when trying to get some sort of favor or way at court. I think it would be better to start with the lower ranks, get them talking, get them on our side, rather than just some supplicants to the privy councilors, one of many. At least if I were trying to get into my own court, which when I was emperor, that's what I would do.
If this Cinderhelm does not have much interest in the door, he might be the easiest to persuade to let us go.
Or
if he wishes not to utilize much thought on it, he might just pass it along.
Yes, but he might just as easily shut us down as a matter below his attention.
Well, then we do not leave.
I just think if the risk is to either gain what we want or gain the ire of wasting the time of the Lord Protector, given his influence over the king, I think that would be a dangerous risk to try and take. Out of character, do we have like a time limit here? Are we racing against a clock at all?
Not that you're aware of. The king, you were told, is probably not even going to be around for another week or two, probably two. So, you can take as much. And in fact, none of these people probably at this point even know you're in town. Don Petroni did say once they do find out, you're probably going to start getting a lot of invitations to functions. So, but at the moment, no, there's nothing really pressing. The door is probably secure where it is. They're probably not going to be able to open it.
Mm-hmm. And T-Hole, to your points, I see the value in trying to spread the idea through the ranks, working from the ground up. It creates a strong foundation for sure, but it also entangles us within these complicated webs of courts. I mean, the egos that you're dealing with and the ulterior motives and the masks that these people wear to hide their true intentions. It's exhausting.
I understand, but you're asking to try to win the game without playing it.
I'm just trying to subvert the game to be more lean more towards our strengths.
He wishes to flip the table.
Sure. I certainly agree. If we had the mental capacities to hold together all of these various webs and to use our powers of persuasion to provide influence over these numerous individuals at court, I certainly would say that is the way to go, but we have to work towards our strengths. We have Hellweir here who's wanting to kill every elf that he sees, not to mention anybody that just looks at him the wrong way.
Finally, a sensible plan.
And shockingly has somehow gained a blessing of Asheros. Blasted Goliath.
I thought Hellweir was the embodiment of Asheros.
It is my greater father who shows me favor, not this Asheros.
Yes, of course.
Regardless, we have Helweir here, who has already been threatened with the gallows. We have Kajika here, who, no offense, but as a hobgoblin, I don't see you having much sway over the dwarves and humans in this place, who are already fearful of a war with the theocracy. Zarius, we have you as a dragonkin, which is already looked down upon as one of the corrupted. Not saying anything against it. I know your character, and that counts for more for me, but others wouldn't see it the same. And T-Hole, we have you, who...
It's glorious in all my own right. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, but unfortunately, I don't think glorious enough to compensate for the lot of us. And
He says you have gone old.
And I know my limits. I have no desire to engage in this just vanity of this court. It is not Asheros's way.
Lucirosi, you really need to work on your pep talks.
Zarius gets up and says, "Where is Daggerface? It is time for his bandages to be switched." And I'll just walk out and try and find him.
It takes a little bit of time, but you eventually do find him. You were all, at least you were sort of generally told where your rooms were. And he is in the room that was assigned to him.
I just walk in.
So you walk in?
Yeah. We must change your bandages.
Okay.
Did you speak with your lord?
I did. He is very confused about the death of Seamus Holbein. He wants me to go and speak to Seamus Holbein's family for some reason. I'm not sure that I will be any comfort to them, though.
Neither am I. And I'll just I'll bandage him up. Not not being trusting of anybody who is of noble birth. I will make sure, like during the swap and everything, make sure nothing funny happened to him.
During what swap?
Whenever I'm swapping out the bandages, but make sure.
Surprise!
In case somebody's trying to do some funny blood business or something, I grab his blood, trying to see if they can open the door. And, I'll just make sure.
Okay, give me an investigation check.
Not a medicine?
Medicine's fine.
All right. So I am not good at investigation. Here we go.
You're 100% sure no one has touched his bandages other than you and maybe him. These are the bandages he's had on for 2 days now, so they're looking pretty bad. He's still, he's healing, but he's still having a problem where, particularly with his sinus, where his sinus is just draining automatically into the bandage.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got his foul cloth mask that he's had for about roughly a month now, most of the time you were traveling, and it's kind of picked up a lot of the blood and other liquids that have soaked through the bandages are staining the mask.
And no other unusual markings along the neck or exposed arms or anything?
No, nothing you haven't seen on him before.
All right.
So where are we going next? I am not looking forward to all these parties.
Neither am I. I do not know where we will be going. I will return to the rest.
And as you go back down, Dom Holt, what's the
Petronio?
thing? Yeah, Dom Petronio. But there it is. Yeah, Dom Petronio meets you in the hallway and goes back into the room with you and closes the door and says, "If I can ask, what happened to Seamus Holbein?"
You mean
yes, I mean the person who keeps insisting his name is Daggerface, but I mean, obviously his mind has snapped. I hesitate to suggest that I seek the help of Bishop Razortongue, but perhaps the madness can be cured. But I was wondering what caused this.
It is difficult to say if it was the effect of unusual dagger, or if it is just a post-traumatic mental break.
Yes, we found him with a magic repelling dagger embedded in his face. Hence, dagger face.
I thought Zarius and Don Petronio were in a hall. We're not there.
No, this is.
They came back into the room.
Oh, okay.
And we set out to search for him, and we found him in an old temple, with a crazed mind flayer who was performing some dark deeds.
He mentioned a mind flayer, but he was less than clear on the details of it. I suppose this dagger is how he received all of the injuries to his face. Do you think that someone might remove a curse? Could that free him of this madness? At the moment, he doesn't want to return to service. He doesn't want to return to his family. He thinks he's an adventurer named Daggerface.
I can't recall, Kurt. Did I ever try to use Lesser Restoration on him?
I don't recall specifically either, but that would not have changed the way he is.
Yeah, I mean,
greater restoration cures insanity.
I considered curse. I think I might have tried it. I don't know.
Yeah. I will say remove curse also wouldn't have undone this.
Yeah.
So you very well might have tried remove curse and it just didn't do anything.
Well, why don't we wait till after we take care of the whole door situation before you go out doing bloodletting and doing whatever you do to cure what madness he's got?
I am not suggesting. I don't mean to interfere with your adventure to open the door. I'm concerned for my friend and for the family of my friend.
What I can say, Don Petronio, is that the miracles granted to me by Asheros have been insufficient to help alleviate his mental state. Perhaps a healer of greater strength than myself or greater knowledge might be able to offer some kind of healing or comfort, but I'm not sure.
Well, my private chaplain doesn't. He's a good man, but he's not blessed with any sort of magical healing power. But I might call on Razortongue to come over and see if maybe he can do something. It might not work, but I fear for his safety if he's off trying to emulate the deeds of people who fight with demons.
He has been mostly useful.
Yes, despite his mental state, his physical prowess in the encounters that we've had have been of aid.
I don't doubt that he was a soldier in his youth, but I fear that, well, he was never, I would say, blessed with a heightened amount of common sense. And I fear that with this madness on top of that, he's likely to charge into the maw of some monster, and then we'll lose him. That's my concern. Not that there's anything wrong with being an adventurer, but it's an odd turn for an engineer and an architect to decide that he wants to be a mercenary soldier.
If he is part of our company, he will not be. He may be killed, but we will do our best to keep him alive.
I don't know if that is very comforting.
He may be killed, but he will be avenged.
Dom, are you familiar with mind flayers at all? I've heard bits and pieces, and T-Hole has provided some information, but...
Me? No, I can't say that I am. I've heard the stories, of course. They tried to invade the Empire once upon a time. They eat brains, drilling holes in your head. But I'm no expert. Mostly I remember the tales that my governess used to frighten me as a child.
Well, I think it is possible that the Mind Flayer had afflicted Samus with some form of madness or as part of the torture that he suffered. And if that's true, I do not believe the Mind Flayer is truly dead. If it had any connection with Graza, and who seemed to die in a similar way, but with the Tor present, it prevented whatever magic that she claimed might resurrect her. And it seemed that the two were in league somehow. And so if that's the case, and given that there was some kind of lingering essence of profound evil where the Mind Flayer had been killed and its body dissolved, it's possible that it's still alive. And if that's the case, then the key to removing Samus's madness might lie with that creature, wherever it may be.
So he is a little confused by that at first, and then you have to sort of unpack the story so that he knows who Graza is and that she's referring to Graza and not to the Mind Flayer. But once he sort of gets the fuller story, he understands what it is you're saying. But he then adds, if you're suggesting that maybe there is some influence of this Mind Flayer, would that not have disappeared when he was in the void magic zone?
He did not seem changed at all. Did any of you notice any change with Samus or Daggerface during that time?
The effects of the Mind Flayer might not be affected by this null zone. If it is of the mind, it does not get pulled through the weave, or whatever you call the magic-y shit. I don't know.
Well, I may have someone check in on him nonetheless. Not that you haven't done your best to take care of him. I know that you have. Probably his injuries will linger for a while, as I doubt even Razor Tongue could heal the physical wounds. But you never know. I'm no expert in these things. I do appreciate all you've done for him, and even if I were able to restore him to his normal self, I would be more than happy to have him help you open the door, I'm sure he would have no problem with that. That is who he has always been.
I don't think that we should put the matter of the door necessarily before the health and well-being of Samus, but still, you're right. We don't know if this is actually the first time I've considered it. If the Mind Flayer has some lingering influence over Samus, then putting somebody on a constant vigil with him would possibly be wise, because who's to say that the Mind Flayer may not have other capacities while Samus is under these influences.
That's a fair point. I'm going to talk to the bishop and see what can be done. As the bishop probably will be coming here for that, do you have any objection to me letting people know that you're here?
Might we? I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think I would prefer that we are discreet in letting people know that we are here. Perhaps not a broad announcement, but select individuals, letting them know.
He laughs when you say that. Of course, I would not send messengers out to everyone, but I can guarantee you, if you tell any one person, it will get around very quickly. That is the nature of court life. Perhaps if I swear the bishop to secrecy, he will keep it to himself.
Based on the dossier provided, he seems an honorable man.
He is, but he won't come here on his own. He'll come here with at least 3 or 4 servants. And the servants will talk, and it will get back. We can always try, and that will be fine. I do hope, by the way, not to impose on you, but I am hoping that when the announcement is made, that I will also be announcing that I will be hosting a dinner, as this is simply too good of a political opportunity for me to let it go by. You are an object of much curiosity, and so it will raise my standing a bit if I am the one who is able to introduce you to the wider court.
I think personally that is the least we could do with the aid that you have provided us thus far.
Oh, and did you have any questions about any of the people that we detailed for you?
I have a couple of questions, but perhaps my colleagues have more pressing questions.
I must acquire wheat and oats.
Sorry, you must acquire what?
Wheat and oats. Wheat and oat.
I imagine if I call downstairs, our baker would have those.
Good. I will need a good supply.
How much would you need?
25 to 50 gold pieces worth.
At
least 25 gold pieces.
What are you planning? That is a lot of grain.
I wish to consult with Osiris. This is an offering.
An offering.
I feel like there is a whole Zarius ate 25 gold pieces worth of oats. This is how he died. I am sure that I can find you that amount. Honestly, I have no idea how much wheat or oats cost or how much we keep on hand at any one time.
I am not surprised. Have it sent to my room.
You can leave it. You can leave it next to the closet door. Next to the butter and lube.
The fire will be negligible. It will not harm your rooms.
So
Okay,
are there any other requests or questions that you had? We obviously didn't include biographies on everyone in the court. We only included the ones who seemed notable to us. So if you come across anyone you need more information on, you can always ask.
I could use some tea. That would be quite nice. And while I am waiting for such tea, I do have a question about this fine specimen, the Marchioness Strongjaw. She seems a very unlikely member of the Privy Council. Do you know what has earned her such a place?
He said member.
Lady Gemmel is very well regarded by the king. Her family is a very old one, and she has good ties with the consortium, which always helps. She is essentially the head of her family because her father passed away, and her father had held the same spot on the Privy Council. I'm afraid she's a little bit of she's a little profligate and indulgent. It's all there in the dossier. Frankly, I don't know that I've seen her sober in more than a year. Even at Privy Council meetings, she tends to show up with alcohol.
Does that not disturb the king? A young man of 14?
I think the king finds her antics amusing. She's suitably restrained around the king to a certain degree. She can be quite forward, especially if she's overly drunk or on some other substance. But with the king, she's not as familiar as she probably would be with, say, you, as there are no consequences for her offending you.
I would be honored if she offended me.
Hellweir speaks up, I'm sure. We sent him to his room.
I mean, I am sure you will meet her. If you wanted me to see if she's available to meet with you privately, I could do that. She certainly, as do everyone we detailed, have some level of influence with the king. So I've no doubt that she would be easy to persuade if you amuse her.
I'm great at amusing people. So one concern I have with the Privy Council members is Montver seems to be a political place in general. And does not everyone try to gain or curry some sort of favor with them? So are not just cold calling from people they don't know suspect in themselves in and of themselves?
Well, certainly there are people who try to curry the favor of the Privy Council, including all of the various ambassadors and courtiers around here. But they do it because they advise the king directly. Most decisions, I think you'll find, aren't raised to the level of the king having to decide them. And so the Privy Council doesn't necessarily need to be involved. But you are correct. People do impose upon them. They will certainly know when you talk to them and ask them for a favor or a vote in your favor that you are asking them for something in your own interests and not in theirs. But that is the function of the Privy Council, is to determine what is the good policy for the kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Does each member of the Privy Council have some sort of unique responsibility?
Not necessarily. The Lord Protector is the head of the military of Longspear. He relies to a large extent on various people, but in particular on Countess Breakbone. At least for purposes of hypothetically setting up military strategies, depending on what may develop at our borders. Otherwise, no. Everyone's job is essentially to review evidence on whatever matters may be of interest at the time, from uprising among the commons to farm policy to whether or not to raise taxes to whether or not to raise an army. Oh, I would also caution, since I'm here, I wouldn't talk too much about the door to anyone who's not at least of noble rank in the court. As I mentioned before, the common people don't know about the door. It's clearly dark magic. I wouldn't say they would panic necessarily, but it would create a dis-ease amongst the regular people of the city to know that there was somewhere out there a magic door and no one knew what was on the other side. I suppose you could convince them it was some sort of gift of the gods, and then that would probably put their minds at ease. But we all know that's not actually what it is.
Yes, I think I agree that discretion is necessary.
Although, I suppose on the other hand, if you started a riot, that would give the king reason enough to want you to enter the manor. Mm-hmm. Oh, dear Lord. That is why the Ebon-clad Brotherhood was probably put on the list. To cause riots.
Yes, Zarius is of the mind that it would be easiest to utilize them. Meanwhile, I am fearful of connecting ourselves to such an organization, not only for its debased nature, but also in terms of potentially creating enemies among the court should our arrangement be discovered.
You must think like a nobleman, Lucherosi. We could use proxies of proxies to do the negotiation.
I've spent a long time trying to not think like a nobleman.
I imagine most of these nobles utilize this group. Otherwise, they would not be in the city. They would have been rooted out and removed.
Oh, I don't think that's exactly true. The Ebon-clad Brotherhood is street-level crime at best. I don't think they've penetrated into the upper echelons of courtly life. I would bet you... Yeah. No, I bet you I would not. But I was going to say, possibly Lady Strongjaw would have some dealings with them, as she must be getting her substances from somewhere.
Could she not just get wine from a tavern?
Yes, I don't necessarily mean wine. Obviously, she has her own suppliers for wine and spirits of all sorts, but she does like certain other substances that are not considered to be legal.
Ah, yes.
So, Don Petronio, I have a question about the High Countess Humbert. Based on what we experienced back in Watchtower, with the demon having infiltrated into the court there, I am concerned that perhaps there's a possibility of some other influence that might be attempting to possibly corrupt or utilize her in some way in a similar fashion. Have her actions outside of her believed illness to be has she been acting out of the ordinary at all, or is there anything else that you might be able to share with us that isn't in the dossier regarding this circumstance?
Well, I'm not personally very close with her, but I would say no. My dealings with her have been more or less consistent over the years. I'm also not a permanent resident here, which is partly why I don't know her that well. She's, I would say, possibly one of the more delightful members of court. She's generally friendly. She's always good for a laugh. As a result, I think a lot of people think she is frivolous, and her fascination with dark magic doesn't necessarily do her much credit with people like Cardinal Hooley, or many of the dwarves around here. If anything untoward has happened to her, I don't know anything about it.
Do you know much about this illness that the clerics were unable to cure, but they believe to have passed?
I know the gossip surrounding it. I wasn't here when she was ill. I arrived later, but the gossip is that the illness that she's still suffering from is mostly in her head, that she has in fact been cured of the disease. I don't know what illness she was suffering from originally, but that afterwards she simply claimed to still feel ill. She started to attend court functions again, so I guess she's not ill enough to stay at home. But the clerics assure everyone that she's in perfect health.
And they have monitored her or attempted to discern whether there's any corruption present within her?
I haven't been close enough to her to be privy to that. I assume... I guess I don't know whether or not they would have attempted to sense corruption within her, as that would be a fairly unusual thing to do. Illnesses generally are not corruption. I'm sure I'm sure her personal chaplain probably used magic to cure the illness that was in her, and then was probably very surprised to find that she claimed not to feel better afterwards. But from what I understand, that there were physical symptoms, and those all disappeared when the magic was applied.
See, we've had a number of experiences in our travels, not just with the encounter with the demon at Watchtower, but also a town that seemed to be afflicted with some kind of poisoning of the well that was magical in nature, as well as certain demonic presences that seemed to be inhabiting the town and creating a significant amount of chaos and destruction. And so the number of events that we're seeing with regards to this, as well as the I don't know if you've been made privy to it, but there's an area not far from Watchtower where there seems to be an entryway into the Shadowfell. And so all of these things happening so close together, it makes me suspicious of even the smallest possibility of some kind of demonic presence.
The Shadowfell, you say? Where was this portal to the Shadowfell?
Lucirosi would do his best to kind of describe where it was. I informed my friend, Cato, think that's his name, right? Cato.
Yeah, Cato Agrippa.
Yeah. Cato Agrippa, and asked him to send men to investigate it further. He's a trusted friend.
Yes. Do you know when the portal opened?
No, but it was quite large. I don't recall. Zarius, do you recall seeing an end to it?
It was large. As best as I could tell. And it seemed to open up while we slept.
No, I think Zarius, we did not see the portal due to the darkness while we were traveling. And I think that we crossed into it unknowingly.
I don't think it was an entryway, so to speak, but an overlap.
Perhaps. I am not learned in the manners of such things.
Neither
Nor
am
am
I.
I.
Look at that one. Just point to Teal.
All I can say is that it was quite large from my perception of it.
That's what she said.
Well, I suppose you might meet with the Countess to see if she is, in fact. I suppose you're suggesting a demon in disguise, or somehow.
Oh no, I'm not saying that she herself is a demon, but perhaps there is some other influence at work.
Yes, I wouldn't know how to detect such a thing, is my issue. If you have a way to discern it, again, you might be able to meet with her and figure it out. Certainly, if there is any influence like that, either her private chaplain has missed it, or he is also affected by it.
Yes, it's also a concern as well because of given the issue that I read about Duchess Berenger, with her partner having succumbed to an illness that seems resistant to clerical magic.
Yes, that is why. Not, I wouldn't say resistant to clerical magic necessarily, as clerics were able to alleviate the symptoms. The problem is, every time they cured someone, within a day or two, someone would be sick. Sometimes several more people would be sick. And then eventually, after repeated recurrences of the illness, her husband and consort passed away. Her female consort, the woman she loves, Alice, continues to be sick with it. I am not certain, though, that is demonic. In fact, it's much more common to the east of us than it is here. It's tracked pretty steadily up from the Athmere. So you can find it's in fact come from a completely different direction than Watchtower, which I suppose doesn't rule out it being demonic in some way. It's, if you want to know, it's actually much more rampant in the lower city than it is here. The poor suffer from it in great numbers, and they are not being given the benefit of magical healing, as there's simply not enough spellcasters to heal everyone.
And at least with the clerics and the servants of Berenger, they've eliminated any potential sources of re-exposure within the home or their community.
As best they can. All of the things that smell bad were taken out of their home. Their home is stuffed with flowers and herbs. What more can be done?
I see. So, as I've expressed to my compatriots, I believe that we do not have the gifts necessary to persuade many within the court, but if we were to utilize our strengths of investigation and problem solving, we might be able to gain favor through that with, for example, these two people, the lady or Countess Berenger and
Lady Alice.
Lady Alice.
As
well as the High Countess.
If you have a way to cure Alice and to not have the disease recur, I have no doubt Lady Berenger would be most happy to support you. I don't know how to do that myself. Evidently, the clerics don't know how to do it either, as they've not done a good job of it so far.
And I'm not even necessarily saying that we would be able to offer much more, but I think at least looking into the matter could prove fruitful, potentially. And also I've known my compatriots to, despite our misfit nature, rise to the occasion when necessary.
Yes.
It's actually possible you could get Lady Berenger to support you without curing Alice, I suppose, but I imagine that would be the swiftest route to it. You might also, if you knew of a way to get Alice out of the city without exposing her to the bitter cold of the winter outside, that would at least, as you say, to eliminate the sources. The normal treatment for people of our class would be for her to retreat to a different home. But the winter makes that problematic.
So that gives us inroads then. Do you not agree, fellows?
Perhaps we can bring her to the doorway.
You mean your magic door? I don't know. I doubt any of us would be brave enough, except perhaps for Lady Mia, to venture with you through the door.
I think Zarius was speaking in jests. Weren't you, Zarius?
No. A moment's pause where he's confused. It's like... Alright.
If there's anything you'd like to do while you're in the city, please, I will leave my bodyman in the hallway where your bedrooms are. Simply tell him he's a man of the world. He knows he was an adventurer himself once before he took an arrow to the knee. So he will be able, I'm sure, to direct you to whatever it is you need.
Excellent. And then, Tom, when are you expecting to hold the dinner?
Well, I would wait for you to say that it's okay to tell people that you're here, and then I would probably announce that you were staying with me and that there would be a dinner held in your honor at the same time.
I see. Fellows,
if we're going out to talk to others, will not people know that we're here?
Well, you won't be able to.
Surprise.
Yes, I will. There are two routes for you on that score. Either you could talk to these people at one of the probably 3 or 4 parties, depending on how long you're here. Most of these people will probably show up to some or all of them. Or I could arrange for you to have separate meetings with them. Third, I have arranged for you to pay visit to the court whenever you arrive. I just haven't told people that that has occurred yet. Probably, again, most of these people will be in attendance at any court function other than perhaps the king and maybe Lord Cinderhelm. So if you wanted to meet them one-on-one, though, I would almost certainly have to arrange that.
let the party be done, and then we will speak to the people then.
That sounds great.
If there's nobody that we need to seek out beforehand, then I agree getting this done sooner rather than later might be best. And you can just hear the dread in Lucirosi's voice as he considers actually attending one of these functions.
Lucirosi, you should cheer up. You'll be an esteemed honor. For once, you can feel like an emperor. It'll be great.
We'll be dancing monkeys. Or lions, in my case.
If you wanted to speak with the Lady Berengere, that should be relatively easy to arrange. Again, I think once you meet with anyone, news will leak out that you are in town.
Yes, well, we certainly don't want to steal your thunder.
Oh, I think it's fine as long as I am the first one to host a party. I don't think it will be so bad if Lady Berengere is the first of the various nobles to meet you and to meet you separately. She's a nice enough human.
Right.
If you can help her, I certainly don't begrudge her that.
Well, I am certainly inclined to help those in need. And I think that following that instinct may give us inroads to the favors that we need within the court. What say you, T-Hole and Kajika, Zarius? Hell, we're...
Well, I'm all right if we meet her before. I'm placing my. I think Lady Gemmel is the one I'm most interested to meet. I think that she could help us. However, I think it would be better to be introduced to her in a party setting, where at least both of us are tipsy.
I have bad experiences with old human women after Mavis. You can go meet with your old lady. I will stay here.
T-Hole, if you feel this strongly about it, perhaps we can meet you after Lady Berengere, while you attend to your business with the Marchioness.
No, I mean, we'll talk to her at the party and then talk to her afterwards for a follow-up meeting.
I will excuse myself from that meeting unless my attendance is strictly required, and even then, under protest.
So you're saying you'll go?
So you're saying there's a chance?
So you're saying there's a chance.
The Dom looks a little. He's not exactly following what exactly you're going to get from this meeting.
Well, Lady Gemmel is in the Privy Council, is she not?
She is. There are two ladies Gemmel, but assuming you mean Strongjaw.
Strongjaw Gemmel. Strongjaw Gemmel. And she seems a bit of a rough and tough type. I think that I and Hellweir would get along fabulously. I think our personalities, once we can create that spark, will allow us at least some small vote of confidence.
Be careful, T-Hole. She may break you.
I'm sure that if, as long as you're festive with her, she seems to be very much a friend of everyone who she has a good time with. I have no doubt that if you share drinks with her, that she will think of you as a fast friend. That's how she is. And then I assume T-Hole chimes in to say, no, you don't understand. We would like to plow her.
Howler.
Yeah, Helwer.
So more and more, Lucirosi's face appears like this.
Fuck.
Look of disgust.
So that Brendan can see it. I will screen share it.
Lucirosi, is there something wrong with your face?
It's just matching what is going on in my stomach.
So I've taken the liberty of requesting that my tailor come this evening. If you could all be here essentially just after dinner, it'll be fine.
Petronio, can you can you tell us, based on the rules of, what is that word? Courtesy within the court, is there an expectation that we will not have our armor or weapons, or would, if they were well polished and in good condition, would it be expected that we wear these, or how best are we to present ourselves during this party?
Yes, forgive me, I didn't explain well. It is illegal to carry weapons in the court, so you will not be armed. Armor would be considered to be extremely odd. Armor isn't even worn by the guards or any of the official police forces within the court itself. I was hiring the tailor because, well, obviously this won't do. So I was simply going to have suits of finer clothing made for each of you. Obviously harder for some, and he looks at Hellweir, but I've no doubt we can get them made relatively quickly.
So
if you have court appropriate clothing already, that will be fine too, but I'm happy to have extra suits made for you.
yes, I do not have anything court ready, but I do have somewhat of a situation. The mace that I'm currently using here, and then he presents Solosary. I have found that if I have Solosary removed from my possession, I lose my sight.
How does that happen?
It is a function of the magic within the mace. I am unsure exactly the reasons behind it. It does help enhance my senses, but it would be difficult for me to be separated from Solosary.
It is an unusual weapon. I don't necessarily know what to tell you. The law is that you are not allowed to bring weapons into the court.
Can it be disguised?
It is quite large. I'm not sure what you would disguise it as. I suppose if you know of a way to magically disguise it.
I am unfamiliar with such things.
As
I imagine
am
that the
I,
court.
unfortunately.
I imagine the court has some means of detecting hidden weapons as well.
There are searches that are conducted. It might be difficult to get it past them. I don't really know how someone would. I mean, there are various levels of safeguards. Obviously, you would never be in a position where you could attack the king with a smuggled weapon. And even if someone were to kill the king, better than average chance that the king would be brought back to life shortly thereafter. But short of getting, frankly, the Privy Council to vote to change the law or to waive the law for you, Parliament's out of session. We're not going to get them to change the law.
Would it be possible, perhaps, if a box could be fashioned with a lock, and I'm allowed to carry the box with me, perhaps upon my back, while some member of the court's guard possesses the key?
I don't know enough about the law to know if that would make it legal. It certainly should, in theory. I have no doubt we could find or fashion a box that would do that. You might look a bit odd.
I already look quite odd.
Well, I will let me look into it and try to figure out if that would solve the problem before we get too far afield.
It would be appreciated. I fear, while it is certainly possible for me to sever my connection to Salasri, it is also seemingly a weapon of great interest to other parties that we have found are able to track it. And so my fear is that were I to leave it somewhere that is not close to myself, that it would likely be stolen.
As he mentions that, it reminds me of the map, and I actually pull it out, just see if there's any other blips on there.
You don't see anything.
All right. Roll it up, put it back.
Well, I will see what I can do. It is certainly very ornate. I'm surprised. I'm sure it's very old and valuable. So,
to my knowledge, it is a weapon that has been used in service of Asheros. So perhaps, what's his name? The Archbishop Razortongue might have some ability to provide additional sway.
he might. As I said, my understanding is the law can only be waived by a vote of the Privy Council or by changing the law at the level of Parliament. The king could certainly waive the law, but we're not going to see him for a while.
Right.
The Archbishop could bring it to a vote in the Privy Council. I probably, with the safeguards in place, no one there would really care.
Just a matter to kind of consider. A bit of a wrinkle in the circumstances. I thought best to make you aware of it now rather than later.
Well, if he gets to bring his weapons in a box, then I'm bringing my weapons in a box.
He'll just wait outside. I'm just imagining Alicia Roshi sitting right out front on the steps, and so it just starts raining.
Well, we certainly don't want you to go blind, and we don't wish to exclude you from anything. So let me see what I can do. Again, probably won't be. They won't be able to take it up for a vote in the Privy Council until after everyone is aware that you're here. Luckily, perhaps your celebrity status will be enough. People assume, I mean, you're adventurers. You must be oddballs.
It is the weapon with which the demon in Watchtower was slain.
Well, that might also lean in its favor. I'm not certain it will be a problem. I just can't give you an answer right now.
Of course. I need somebody to help me walk around the party. I'm blind.
Don't trust Hellweir.
No, he'll lead me right into Stonejaw's boobs.
He's gonna walk into pillars and shit.
Yeah.
All right, we're going down steps, and you're going up.
So the Duke excuses himself and leaves the room again. It's actually getting relatively late in the day. At least it's mid, like 9 p.m. ish, nighttime.
What were the people that you guys were wanting to talk to? I need to write them down.
So I had 3 that I was most interested in. There was the Duchess Berenger. Here, I'm just gonna copy and paste them in here.
That'll be most handy.
That one. And then this one. And then this one. Oops. Okay. BRB.
There in the just reposted it in Roll20 so that it will survive somewhere once the broadcast ends.
Yes, of course.
It's a lot of people.
You know, the more the merrier.
Ish. My divination spells, I can ask one question. One question, that's it. And each time after the first casting, there's a chance that I don't get an answer. So, and I think it's cumulative.
This is the divination spell.
Yeah.
So think about what you want to ask.
So, I'd like to find out where Lady
Aristra? Constantina Aristra. It's Lady
Yeah.
Constantina is the correct way of saying it, but so the bodyman that the Duke left to answer your questions and help you do whatever you need to do, he knows where Calabria's compound is. He's quite certain she would be there.
Okay.
I mean, he doesn't necessarily know like what room she would be in or anything like that, but if you asked for her there.
Okay. Would I know whether this would be an okay time to go over?
I mean, hobgoblins aren't necessarily that different from other races. You would know that, 9:30 at night is a little bit late for some people. You don't necessarily know what she would think of it.
Okay. Yeah, hell, I'm going to go over there.
So you make your way there.
Okay.
It is a compound again. I mean, you have papers that essentially give you authority to travel around this district. So it's not as if you probably do get stopped, a hobgoblin walking alone at night in the deep core of this city. But the papers are more than enough to answer anyone's questions. So you're sent on your way again with an apology, and you make your way to this estate. The gate is closed, but there are 4 guards outside and probably more inside the gate.
Okay. I'm looking to see Lady Candidina. Is she up and about?
I don't know if she's up. She probably is, would be my guess, but I don't keep track of her. Who exactly are you?
Tell her Kajika's here to see her.
And he sort of huffs a little bit, but he yells essentially into the night air, and you hear somebody on the other side of the gate take off running. You're going to have to wait here, but we'll see if she's willing to meet with you so late at night. But after a few minutes, you hear some more running back, and the gate begins to creak open. And then another guard inside steps forward and says, "I am to take you to a meeting room. Please follow me."
Very well. All right.
And he turns and walks off with you following behind him.
Okay.
On your way there, he asks, "How is it that you know the lady?"
Well, we ran into each other at a watchtower a bit ago.
Yeah, that's surprising. I didn't realize that she had there was as much of a social call as that. Are you with the Hobgoblin Embassy?
I can't say that I am.
Really? So there's not. I'm actually not aware of there being any hobgoblins in this town that aren't members of the embassy. And he leads you up to this. This house is quite a bit bigger than Don Petronio's house. It is. I know it's a good bit more fortified. Still not necessarily something you would want to. It looks like at one time it was probably very heavily fortified, but it's been modified to add glass windows and to let more light into the structure itself. So severely compromising its ability to withstand an assault, but which I assume you would take note of.
Mhm.
But still pretty big, almost castle sized within this city. He leads you inside into a grand foyer, and then across to a sitting room on the side that is still probably 50 by 30. There are various musical instruments are scattered around, and books line the walls of this place. I guess you're supposed to wait here. I suppose I'll wait with you.
Sure.
And in a few minutes, the Lady Condadina comes in. Kajika, it's good to see you again.
Well, I hope I'm not disturbing you so late in the evening.
No, I tend to be a night owl, so I was still awake. You're dismissed, and the guard walks off. So I'm glad to see you made it. Have you been hiding? We expected you to be here probably two weeks ago.
Well, sometimes you get sidetracked. Things happen.
Well, I'm certain that. Have you been in the city that whole time? Now you've got me curious about what happened on your way here. Whether it was just, I was once somewhat less refined, I think, than I am now. I've spent more than my fair share of time letting things just happen in large cities.
Not sure what you're getting at, but we haven't been here the whole time.
Is that
We just
innuendo?
rolled in.
Well, is there something you need from me?
Well, I wanted to thank you for the drink that you shared with me back in Watchtower. Even though
Oh, that was my pleasure. I'm happy to share another drink with you now, in fact. And she walks over and opens up some cabinets underneath one of the bookcases and begins to pull out some bottles. And you can tell me all about the adventures you had getting here and why it seems to have taken you almost twice as long as I would have expected.
Okay, so I will go into the details of what happened, and then when I get to talk about the gate to the Shadowfell, and I will find that black coin or whatever and show it to her and say, "Does this make any sense? Anything? Make heads or tails of this?"
Well, the metal is familiar, but I've never seen coins like this before. She's taking it and sort of rubbing it in her hand.
Well, you can keep it.
She casts a spell. I don't know that you would, if you're not trained in Arcana, you would have no idea really what spell she's casting.
Good question. Am I trained in Arcana or not? I don't know. No.
Fireball. No. Well, it's not magical. So it may just be a coin. But the metal's from the Shadowfell. I suppose you might be able to get it somewhere else, but my understanding is that's the primary source of this metal. Where did you get this coin again?
Yeah, where did we get that coin? Was it in that hut?
In the shadow. That's some weird barrier between them.
No, this is.
No, I thought it was from the elves.
Yeah, this coin was pulled by Daggerface off of the elves when he decided he might as well loot.
Those are the elves that attacked us for Solastri, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just tell her that's where we got them off some elves.
Some elves. How much detail are you going into?
I will leave out they attacked us because of Solastri part.
But you're like describing them?
Yeah, I mean, I'll describe what they look like. Yeah, weren't they gray elves or something? Yeah.
They had gray skin, and all of them had black hair except for the one who was completely bald.
Yeah, they look sickly.
Well, they sound like Shadowkai. Sort of a shadow fae from the Shadowfell. So it would make sense that they would have coins like this, I suppose. I've never seen a currency made of this particular metal, though. It's mostly used to make weapons and armor and tools. Strangely, they would even make coins out of such a functional metal.
Well, I don't know what they're doing here and what this gate to the Shadowfell's about.
I wouldn't know that either. I mean, I've done a little more research on demons since the last time we met, but I'm not aware of them having any particular connection to the Shadowfell.
Well, I just wanted to enlighten you on our trip. Don Petronio is going to be having some sort of dinner hoo-ha going on. And I
imagine there will be several events in your honor after Watchtower. I mean, at the very least, I'm sure Pride Guard is going to want to throw some sort of event in your honor, probably a dinner.
Well, you're more than invited. If you have any advice for navigating this court. I'd really appreciate it.
Well, do you mean just impressing people, or do you mean trying to convince them to let you access that door?
Well, I wouldn't want to impress. I'm not interested in impressing. I'm just don't want to make any sort of social faux pas.
Make me a persuasion check with advantage.
Persuasion. Oh shit! I don't have any of that. All right. Persuasion. Come on. Yeah, the rolls keep coming.
Well, you'll have to let me give it some thought. I don't necessarily know how you could convince them to let you access that door, as well, I'm not sure there's anything in it for the Kingdom of Longspear to let you in. I mean, other than, of course, your goodwill and continued friendship to the court, but I guarantee you they're all a little too snooty to care about those things.
What's your role here in Longspear?
Well, I don't myself have a role here in Longspear. I'm essentially just a retainer to the Duke. The Duke, although his lands are mostly further south and not in Longspear, he does have several holdings here in the kingdom. And when the king ordered all of the nobility to come to Longspear because of the delivery of the door, that announcement also caught him up. We were close enough that it didn't make sense to try to give an excuse. So we're stuck here until the king makes some sort of official announcement related to the door. We're not really sure what that announcement is going to be yet.
Very well. Well, I best be on my way. I appreciate your time, and please pass on my whatever to the Duke there. I'm glad y'all made it safe and sound.
You know, you might try to sway Hanale bin Shafaz to your cause. Just a hunch, but my impression has been that Little King Hao may have a bit of a crush on her. Her voice may carry some additional weight as a result. I think we all know that when you have a crush on someone, you want to try to impress them. I don't know her myself personally, so I don't know whether or not she would be willing to put in a good word for you, but if she were, why not try to manipulate the poor preteen?
Okay.
Excellent advice.
Hanale bin.
That's the other whatchafucket, right?
Azamar.
Yeah, she's the Asimar.
Who looks completely stoned in this picture. Sure, I'll keep that in mind.
If I think of anything, I assume you're staying with Don Petronio?
Yep. So far, I haven't been kicked out yet.
Well, if you do find yourself needing another place to stay, as the Duke's daughter has traveled south again, I'm sure he would be fine with your staying here. But he would probably be that much happier if you continued to stay with the Duke, Dom Petronio.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
And I'm sure I will see you at some of these parties, but I may drop by if I can think of anything else to help you out.
Yeah, don't be a stranger.
Don't you be a stranger either. Feel free to come back if you need anything.
All right, and I will see myself out.
So you leave, go back out the gate and start heading back. What are the rest of you doing?
Not a microwave.
Oh yeah, that's mine.
Zarius is old, so he's probably gone to bed.
Lucirosi might do some prayers or play with his puzzle box a little bit, but then go to bed.
He would probably remind one of the servant guys or whatever that he expects to see the oats and grains and such in his room. The more there is, the better.
Yeah, I at some point they will bring you up what is actually probably about 50 gold pieces worth of oats and wheat, because the stores here are huge and they just stock up, at least on things that aren't going to go bad very quickly. So they're just like 2 like linen sacks that are waiting for you when you get upstairs.
Perfect. I'll have to do it.
Actually, I forgot this picture of Hanalei bin Shafaz had her in such a low-cut dress. Of course the king has a crush on her.
Yeah.
I also noticed that Yusta, the Thundering Spirit, who is a hobgoblin, is literally Hobgoblin from the Marvel comics.
Yeah, you may have
that card.
You may have missed his introduction, where I introduced him as the man with a winning smile, and then showed his picture. So if you're not doing anything else, the next morning comes, and you're all awake again.
Did I get anywhere on my puzzle box?
Roll me an investigation check. Yes, you haven't completely opened the puzzle box, but you've managed to spring a connection on it that allows you to essentially turn it across its diagonal so that you can now sort of have the puzzle box around.
Excellent.
Along its like longer edge. But from there, it's not clear why that's useful.
Well, for me, it's just a distraction. I don't think anything actually is going to come of it. As far as Luciros is concerned, they're also, I believe, famous last words.
You ever see Dude, Where's My Car?
Yes.
Fucking around with the Rubik's Cube.
I don't remember that part.
Yeah, the Rubik's Cube is the key to the whole movie. It's the thing all the aliens are looking for.
He doesn't remember that part, though.
It's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
Yeah. Dude finally figures it out. It's like, dude, I got it. And it like transforms in his hand. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I was picturing more of like a Hellraiser puzzle box.
Yes.
So things could go wrong.
So maybe it's a little late, but T-Hole would have, I was trying to think of what he would do, and he would be copying over stuff of this codex, like last night. And now that he's in the city with things, and he picked up some supplies last session, or in the town.
Okay, so you continue doing that.
Yeah.
So anything you want to do as downtime activity, you can pretty easily do that now. We can even go into it offline. There are some downtime activities that take more time, that essentially take like a whole week of downtime. Like if you wanted to find either sell magic items or buy magic items, that takes longer than some other things.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any are there any people in the area that are suffering from poverty or a church of Ashros nearby?
There is absolutely, as far as you can tell, other than maybe servants who live on the grounds of these different compounds in the inner city, not a single poor person lives in the district that you're in.
Okay.
Even when you go to the middle district where most of the citizens live, it seems as if it's more the well-to-do citizens. Most of the poor are either out in the countryside or in the outer district, the travelers district. And as you do within the inner core, there are various churches throughout the city itself. There's only one in the inner core, and it is essentially a gigantic cathedral-sized building.
Mhm.
But like most churches, it seems to be dedicated to all four gods.
Okay. Well, I'll probably find the closest church then and give it 50 gold pieces.
Yeah, the closest church to you would be
from
that
source.
giant cathedral that the archbishop runs.
So I'd probably make a donation to the church then. 50 gold pieces.
So you go in and you find there's a friar inside who collects it and thanks you for the donation. Gives you a little blessing before you leave.
Sure, see, walks out with a bit more pep in his step. Take that, Hellweir.
Are you actually? I didn't think to ask. Are you keeping your face covered in general or not?
In general, yeah. I know being out and about, seeing a lion man is usually disconcerting to the citizens.
Right.
So, do you want me to make a stealth check to see how well I do that?
No, I will assume you've gotten good at least at that.
Okay.
What are the rest of you? What in general do you want to do with the day?
T-Hole would try to, he's interested in seeing what libraries they have here. He's going to try to see if he can look up and try to find out why his name has been scrubbed from history books. So he's gonna he'll inquire. He'll try to call Don Petronio and ask him if he has any books on kind of history of the empire or things of that nature. Because even though that we're not in the empire, I'm certain that there are books about the empire.
Yeah, actually, he leads you into there's one room within his manor that they consider to be the library. You actually have noticed almost every sitting room, not necessarily the bedrooms, but there are a number of sitting rooms, and all of them seem to have some number of books in there. You're guessing they're mostly decorative, like that people aren't actually reading these books. The library seems to be more where people go to get books that they're going to read. And actually, you determine that pretty much the only topic that they cover reasonably well in this library is history. There are occasional books on other subjects, but it's just not well stocked for anything but history. The books are all pretty old, nothing nearly so old as you, but several centuries old. You don't see anything that you would consider to be like a relatively new book. The newest book you come across is probably about 200 years old. But give me an investigation check. So going through, you're easily able to find books that are on specifically the history of the empire or include accounts of the empire as it was. I mean, when these books were written, the empire was still in existence and relatively strong 200 years ago. The more recent ones talk about the sort of the beginnings of what became the dissolution of the empire. And to some extent, it declined over the course of centuries, but the big push to end it happened about 200 years ago. Looking back to the ones that cover older periods of history, though, you see the same pack of lies that you always see of the first emperor, Gloranthes, coming across the sea and unifying Kfor in the center of the country, and no reference at all to Emperor T-Hole.
Of course. Then I close the book and I just look to Dom Petronio and say, this just makes me sick.
I'm not much of a reader myself. He leaves.
T-Hole kind of, he sits, I imagine him sitting in like kind of one of those, like, I imagine they have like a big red chair, like the high back chair.
Yes.
And he's just kind of sitting, like pursing, like his, like pinching his brow, just like, and I'm gonna go try to run after him and be like, of all the nobles, who would you say is the most learned of them?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say any of the nobles here are thought of as scholars. I'm not necessarily a noble, but the closest person here to a scholar would be Archbishop Razortongue. I mean, he is actually quite well regarded in scholarly communities around the continent.
Oh, okay. Maybe
Lady Contadina has a unfortunately magical library that she carries with her. It's very well stocked. It may be as well stocked as the university here in town. I mean, there are scholars who work at the university, so you might try there. Most of them you'll find clerics of one sort or another.
I see. Well, I've had the pleasure of being in Miss Contadina's library at one point, but I wouldn't mind a second visit. Well, thank you very much. And then I'm going to go back to where we all were before, to just see if anybody else is around. See if anybody would be interested in paying Archbishop Razortongue a visit.
Lucirosi would be up for that.
All right.
So that's what you're going to go try to find him?
Yeah, might as well. And
Tio, what is it that you want with the Archbishop?
well, apparently he's a scholarly man, and as such, he has likely has a host of history books at his disposal. I'm interested to see what they think of the original empire. Since we have some downtime, I might as well try to learn more and figure out why nobody else recognizes my greatness besides me. And you, and you fellows, of course.
Right. So are we not trying to visit with the Duchess Berenger before we set out to speak with the others?
I would like to go to Archbishop Razortongue for his library at some point.
You know, it might be best to speak with him before seeking out Berenger or High Countess Humbert to get his sense of what might be going on with these different diseases and ailments. I imagine me and him would get along quite well based on the information in the dossier.
Oh, I'm sure.
Actually, Kurt, would Lucerosi have heard of the Archbishop previous to the dossier?
What's your? Let me just look at your character sheet for a second. How scholarly would you say your character is?
Not at all.
So, like, if you had heard his name, it wouldn't be one that's stuck.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because he is, I mean, he's considered to be more of like a philosopher, which doesn't sound like it's your thing.
Yeah, that's not. Lucerosi's not big on philosophy. He's big on reading the text and following the text.
So, I mean, you probably, in fact, would have heard of him in passing in like lists of archbishops, but there are still, probably more than 200-300 archbishops in the world.
Okay. So yeah, T-Hole, it might be good to try and speak with the Archbishop. I wouldn't mind accompanying you.
Let's go. Zarius, Kajika?
I don't think this fellow's going to particularly like me, so I'm going to pass on that.
How weird?
But Kajika, you have such a lovely personality.
I suppose I can come along. I'm trying to come up with the proper question to ask.
And Hellware says, I have my own meetings to go to today.
Oh. I mean, Ashros.
If you die, may you die well.
Just ask him how many heretics he has burned.
If you wind up killing him, bring me his ears.
He's a halfling. He's not an elf.
I took the other halfling's ears.
Who is outside of Ashros, who is a famous saint of Ashros?
I mean, the single most famous saint is probably Saint Belry.
Okay. Saint Belry instead of Jesus Christ.
I miss those halfling ears. They took them from me in Watchtower and didn't give them back.
It's because they were jealous.
Your fixation on ears is unhealthy, Hellware.
We waste time. Let us move.
Agreed.
So I imagine, like, as we're strolling, T-Hole is just a casual mention. So, how did communing go last night?
Not done yet.
So all those oats are just sitting in your room?
Yes. Until I can come up with the proper question to ask, I will not waste my god's attention.
What is it that you're seeking in terms of guidance?
This is one of the things I must determine. But it seems an appropriate time to do so, should the wisdom come to me.
So, T-Hole, give me an investigation check. So you set out and you're strolling, and after about half an hour, you're not anywhere in particular. You're in the streets. You're following T-Hole, but T-Hole doesn't seem to have like a specific destination.
We have passed this building 3 times. Where are we going?
You know, I never asked Don Petronio where he lived.
T-Hole. I can't even be upset with you. I'm upset with myself.
You both have gods. Why don't you ask them where he lives?
It is also unseasonably cold. It is probably about 10 degrees Fahrenheit. There's a light snow is falling. It's actually otherwise lovely other than the cold. The winds are relatively light. So it was not a bad stroll overall. It's just a chilly one.
Is that
everybody there's a guard around?
Everybody can make me an investigation check.
Does mine still count, or do I make another one?
No, yours. You
jest.
Yeah, Lou Shirosi, because the DC was actually very, very low. Even on T-holes, he just rolled poorly. Lou Shirosi is the first one to think, maybe the gigantic cathedral.
Oh, yeah. I was just there. Surely the Archbishop stays in the cathedral. If not, they can direct us. Off we go.
You know, when I was leaving, that's kind of what I was thinking. But then I just got so preoccupied with the day.
So entering the cathedral, you encounter a priestess, and she says, "You want to talk to the Archbishop?"
Yes.
Yeah.
Is
he available?
I can inquire, but he's a very busy man. Who are you? Do you have some business with him?
That's when Luciorsi turns. Don Petronio didn't announce us yet. Nor should we not have. Why didn't we go through him first?
Don Petronio mentioned that he only wished to formally announce and have the first dinner.
No, he said that he could set up meetings individually with those that we wanted to see.
Better to catch people unawares and on your own terms rather than in a formal setting. That's the secret to ruling an empire.
So Zarius stepped forward. Needs probably his tower. I don't know who is it a human girl or?
Yeah, it's a human woman.
So I mean, he's probably towering over this woman here at his near 7 foot height. Just sort of leans in and says, quietly, tell the Archbishop, right? That's what we're here for?
Yeah.
My memory failed. Quietly tell the Archbishop that the saviors of Watchtower are here. And do not speak this to anyone else. as a couple of teeth become visible.
Okay, give me your intimidation check. I want to see how much you've scared this girl.
Yeah, sure. Probably. I mean, I got a +5, but I'm probably gonna roll shit. I just know it. I got the feeling. Hey, all right.
So you can see there is, as you expose your teeth, there is some terror in her eyes as she instinctively shrinks down, looking up.
Tell no one.
At that point, Lucirosi will step forward and put a hand on Zarius' shoulder and say, Zarius, you're scaring the girl to death. Please.
I'll just stand full height again. I just wait for her.
She backs up and she turns and slowly starts to walk off. And then
Zarius, I swear, if the guards come after that display, I'm going to be quite upset.
I told her not to tell anyone.
Yes, well.
Why don't all criminals think to tell people that? You can get away with so much more. So you're waiting there. There are people milling about inside the cathedral. It is an immense building. It's probably not the largest Lucirosi or some of you have ever seen. It's probably, it's larger than any building the hobgoblins would build, or probably any structure, at least, that the dragons would build. It may not be the biggest if you count like enormous caves and caverns, but it's a pretty impressive building, given that the city itself is probably only 250,000 people. After a couple of minutes, you see a very large, almost spear-like staff moving among the pews in this cathedral. You don't actually see the person who's holding it, though, until it clears the pews, and you see this very, very short halfling man who's making his way over to you.
So I understand you're friends of Dom Petronio. Is that correct?
Yes, we are guests of his currently.
And you've scared the poor priestess Antonia half to death.
At that, Lucirosi kind of eyeballs Zarius and says, yes, that it was an unfortunate. We deeply apologize for scaring the girl. That certainly was not our intent.
I imagine right now Zarius is like off looking at a pillar, just that maybe has some like intricate carving, so he's not even hearing this, just like scratching at it.
I'm sure she'll be fine in the end. I suppose you have to grease the wheels of the bureaucracy somehow. Maybe try a less aggressive approach in the future. If you're friends of Don Petronio, he could have very easily set up something. In fact, I really only have a couple of minutes before I have to leave you, but for the heroes of Watchtower, I figured it's probably worth indulging you a little bit. I am Archbishop Cutter Brightborough.
Lucirosi bows respectfully and says, I am Lucirosi. Yeah, I don't have any other name.
I like to think you said that.
Just Lucirosi.
I am Lucirosi.
And I am Emperor T-Hole, the first and foremost emperor of the empire.
Zarius takes a moment, remembering that these people like to have all their crazy names, and he'll actually say his full name. It's only 2 names, but he says, I'm Zarius Hashphronixidin.
So what does hash phoenixidin mean in your tongue?
Keeper of the graves.
Well, that's certainly an interesting one. Lady Patron has a name that it's more akin to a paragraph.
Oh yes, she is the other dragonkin.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forget. You're new to town. She is not officially an ambassador, but basically an ambassador from the Golden Scale Host. They are a group that's taken up residence in the northwest corner of the province of Secundus in the Empire, displacing a lot of the Imperial forces. So, whole story there herself. Did you, in any event, did you need something from me?
Well, and then Lucirosi kind of eyeballs T-Hole with a look of, we should have went through Don Petronio, but then says, well, we were just passing through and figured that we might pay our respects directly, as well as if
he actually laughs at that when you say we've come to pay our respects. He just starts giggling to himself.
I'm sorry, did I offend in some way?
Oh, no. I just think normally when I go and pay my respects, I don't frighten the staff.
Yes.
Obviously, we pay
regrettable.
Very different.
Very sorry. But Archbishop, we recognize that your time is valuable, and certainly you have other matters to attend to. But might we be able to speak with you further at some point, perhaps later in the day?
I'm actually supposed to go to Dom Petronio's estate later on this afternoon, probably around Vespers, later in the shortly after I have my dinner usually. I'm happy to spend a little extra time there when I'm done looking at Holbein.
Oh, that would be excellent. We would certainly welcome the opportunity to speak with you further.
He is Daggerface now.
I am told that he now goes by the name Daggerface, but I still think he is fundamentally also the same as Holbein.
Daggerface would disagree.
I've heard that too. Hopefully, by the time I'm done, he will agree again.
That would certainly be a welcome change.
This might be a little forward, but I'm deeply interested in history, being the first emperor and all. Do you happen to have any history books or a library that is dedicated to history that I may peruse?
Well, not here in the cathedral, but we do have a very well-stocked library in the university that I could recommend to you. I could get you access to it if you'd like.
I'm sorry, I just need to know, how does the Archbishop respond or react when he hears T-Hole say, I'm the first emperor?
Give me an insight check. Anyone who wants to can give me an insight check.
I was going to ask for an insight check for a different reason, just because I wanted to size this guy up, see if this guy has what it takes to actually cure Daggerface whenever I couldn't. But
at least T-Hole and Lucirosi, he does not, and Zarius, he does not hide his disbelief as well as he thinks he's hiding his disbelief.
I can see the disbelief in your eyes.
Well,
and it's shocking. I understand. I get that, but I am here in the flesh.
Lucirosi just hangs his head like, how did I find myself amongst these people?
So when you say that, he sort of looks to the floor, looks at his feet, and then looks up again, smiling, saying, That is well spotted. I'm afraid you took me by surprise, and I wasn't able to hide my incredulity at hearing that you were the first emperor. You have to understand, I've not heard of you, sir, and my understanding of history is somewhat different than yours. So, to be honest, I was kind of wondering if perhaps, and I don't mean to insult you, did you suddenly discover that you were the emperor at around the same time that Daggerface discovered that he was no longer Seamus Holbein?
No. I mean, oddly enough, I've been alive for over 1,000 years.
Doesn't look a day over 50.
Well preserved. Unfortunately, the history books are lacking my name, although they do make some hints towards my deeds. So,
well, I actually have many questions, including how did you come to lose your throne if you've been alive the whole time? But I think I need to table that for the moment, and we can discuss it when I come to Don Petronio's later today. Did you need anything else?
The university access should be good.
That I will have to send a messenger out for, but I'm sure by the end of the day I can have that done.
Thank you. It's most appreciated.
Yeah, I'll update you on that when I see you later on today. I'm afraid you're not going to find history books that mention you as emperor, unless were you ever Gloranthius the First?
No. That traitor. Yeah. Gloranthius the First. He was an asshole.
Well, he was a conqueror. That tends to go together.
Yes. Well, thanks to Gloranthius the First, he's the reason that my name was wiped out. You know what they say? The history is written by the winners.
They do indeed say that. And I would say you probably would then not be the first monarch that I'm aware of to have been erased from history by some subsequent ruler. Although if he deposed you, you're not truly the emperor anymore. You understand that, right?
Well, who's alive? Me or Gloranthius?
He is not, but he passed the scepter along to other people since then. The current emperor is Aurelius VII, as far as anyone knows. News travels slowly sometimes.
Well, Mr. Archbishop, there's a long, long road to getting my empire back.
All right, so Archbishop, thank you so much for humoring my friend here. This conversation.
You can also see he is actually really kind of really engaged by this whole thought of how do you prove that you're the emperor when you were deposed 1,000 years ago. He is thinking this through at a deeper level than anyone you've run into so far.
So yes, thank you for humoring my friend here. We certainly don't want to waste any more of your time, though. It would be appreciated if you could send the messenger for T-Hole to access the library. And we look forward to speaking with you further at Don Petronio's.
Yeah, I look forward to continuing our conversation, Your Highness. I don't know, what term did you use back then? Imperator, presumably?
Imperator. That's about right. Although I'll accept any title of deference.
Good to know. So he turns and makes his way back down the aisle between the pews.
One of these days.
Zarius, you can make an insight check to see how competent he is. You can't necessarily tell like how much more powerful his magic would be than Lucerosi's. He does. You get the sense that if push came to shove, he's not exactly the pushover he might appear to be from his size.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in a fight between him and Dom Petronio, you're sure this guy would wipe the floor with Dom Petronio.
Sure.
Even though Dom Petronio probably has 250 pounds of muscle on him.
Uh-huh. I mean, all right. Sure.
So Zarius, has this helped you consider the question that you want to ask at all?
No. This has not been enlightening.
Perhaps you should save us all the time and trouble and ask Osiris if T-Hole is actually correct.
You can ask your gods, but I'll tell you it's a futile waste of time. Because
this is a curious question. I may consider it.
T-Hole, you were saying?
Saying you can use your question to do that. If you would so like. But one day
Divinations only works on a specific goal, event, or activity to occur within 7 days. So 1,000 years ago, it's outside the purview of it. Which is good, because otherwise I was like, oh, damn, I'm going to have to really advance the backstory of T-Hole pretty quickly.
I think we need something like Legend Lore for that.
Might be able to get Commune a little later on. A couple levels. I was hoping I had that, but it's a 5th level spell, huh?
Right.
So it is actually still pretty early. It is, not even noon. So what do you want to do with your afternoon?
Well, there's no poor people around. What about anybody that might be sick or hurt? Is there any kind of infirmary or hospital around?
Not that you've seen. You did hear that there was the Eastern fever was mostly affecting the poor, so that would be in the lower part of the city, the outer city.
Mm-hmm. How long would it take me to get to the outer city?
Probably about 45 minutes of walking.
Okay. Actually, that's something I'd like to do then. I'd probably use that time to do some investigating, to learn more about this Eastern fever is what it's called. To learn more about the Eastern fever and see if there is anybody that I can try to at least temporarily alleviate of some of their suffering.
Okay. First, before I go into that, what are other people doing?
I'm going back to the ambassador's house.
Which ambassador?
The Hobgoblin.
Okay. Yeah, he actually doesn't. He's the one who doesn't have. Most of the ambassadors don't have houses per se. They have embassies. But you go back to the embassy. Anybody else doing anything?
Teal's probably going to go back to Dom Petronio's.
Yeah, I mean, I had that Demonwood quarterstaff.
Yep.
I might see if I can. I was kind of wanting to while we were on the road, but it's been kind of blizzardy out. But imbue it with some magic, maybe. You'd take the time to perhaps start enchanting it.
Okay, you can use the afternoon to begin that process.
Yeah.
What are you trying to enchant it with?
I don't know. We're just the ground layer of enchantments, I guess. So that later on, once I figure that out, I can add it on.
Okay, keep track. Like, well, we'll count this as essentially 1 day of doing that. Start to keep track of that because it takes a while.
Yeah, I figured.
So we'll start with Mike. Give me an investigation roll.
Well, actually, it's been a while since Peter's done anything, so I'm okay with waiting for Peter to go first.
Okay, so you're back at the embassy. They've let you in more or less without checking papers or anything because you're a hobgoblin. They do essentially poke at you a bit when you're walking through, and they explain it's because they let hobgoblins in, but how do they know illusory disguises from real hobgoblins?
Yeah, that's the best way.
But one of them comes up to you to ask you what your business is.
No, I'd like to see the ambassador for just a moment.
So you give him your name and he walks off. Eventually, the ambassador they don't lead you anywhere. You're still in the compound, essentially outside the embassy. And you see the ambassador comes walking out to you.
Does he look pissed?
Give me an insight check.
Insight check.
He doesn't necessarily look pissed, but he looks like he's got concerns that center around you.
So I give him the formal greeting, whatever his station is. Ambassador, just wanted to pass on some information that I learned along the road on the way here.
Very good. What is it that you're passing along?
Well, I found some 1st Regiment, 2nd Battalion soldiers that were dead. They had been killed by some sort of demon or something. And I tell him where this place was because I couldn't so far to the west, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. So you give him that. You tell him it was near Timbercrest,
There we
outside of Timbercrest, the town. Are you giving him the stuff you collected from them? They had like little rods that they were carrying.
The soldiers?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll tell him that.
Well, can I have their rods then?
We didn't collect them, did we?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Well, I don't have them. Well, I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't have them with me.
Well, that's fair enough. There's probably not that much I can do with them at this point. But I appreciate your bringing me the information. I don't know what to make of it. Why they would have been killed out there. Obviously, we've got a bit of a demon problem going on in Longspear, which is reason enough for the Hob to be concerned about this place.
There was also a gate to the Shadowfell right by there, too.
Give me an insight check. He says, yeah, can't imagine why there'd be a gate there. Must be one of those random things. But you're 100% sure he's lying.
Well, I'll get you those rods, Ambassador, and get back to you.
You sense, in fact, that he was a little taken aback that you were sharing this information with him. And that he knows something about the gate.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just thank him for his time and move on.
Well, I'm glad you brought this information to me.
don't know that it's going to change the timetable or anything, but when do you think you guys are going to actually make your push to go for the door?
I haven't been privy to that. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance with this whole situation. So there's some formalities that have to be done first.
Well, I'm sure I'll be a part of all the formalities because I always get invited to these things. They're not that bad as long as you just tune out the chatter and realize that nothing anybody says to you, these things is important.
Ain't that the truth?
Well, I look forward to seeing you again. Take care, soldier.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I leave.
Okay, Lucia Rosie, give me an insight check.
All right.
Or, sorry, investigation, not insight.
Nice. Bum bum bum.
Yeah, the official hobgoblin salute may now have been set in stone by Tony.
Oh.
So you go down to the lower city, to the Travelers District again. It's it's many times larger than the inner districts of this city. But you begin asking around, and you find that the Eastern fever is pretty widespread down here. It's not necessarily like everyone has it. And the people who have it aren't always like bedridden immediately. It takes a little while for it to get into swing and become life-threatening. But the one place hardest hit is essentially a ghetto that's filled with refugees from Morilios, essentially sort of the fantasy China and Japan of my world. That whole region was destroyed about 200 or so years ago by an invasion of Kuatoa, and its people scattered around. Everyone blames, from what you found, the Eastern fever on them. They brought it with them from the East, hence it got its name, and that's why they're the hardest hit. People blame it on various practices of theirs, strange things that they eat, weird foods, weird pets that they keep. Nobody really seems to have any information about what the real cause of it is. A lot of them do ascribe to the smell theory of disease, and just believe it's just the general body odor of these people that causes the problem. But making your way to that ghetto, you find that it is, even amongst the poor here, these are the dirt poor. Sorry, back spasm because I hurt my back. They've got whereas most places can probably at least afford wood on the floor, these people can't. They're essentially living in single room shacks with dirt floors in the middle of the city. The sanitation is terrible. The food seems as if a lot of what you're seeing in barrels nearby is partly rotted. So these are probably the lowest level of the society here.
Mm-hmm. So lots of vectors for disease to actually be spread and maintained then.
Yes. Although this is a fantasy world, so the smell theory of disease may be scientifically accurate.
True. And this is essentially a literal yellow fever, it sounds like. If I am I speaking with anybody through all of this, or is this just things that I'm just personally observing?
You're speaking to various people, trying to figure out like who's sick, where the sickness is, where it came from, things like that. That's what I figure the investigation check includes.
Yeah.
So gathering as much information about it as you can. So the cause is not especially clear from the investigation, but the geography of it seems reasonably clear. You would even guess that it does seem like it's kind of radiating out from this ghetto.
Mm-hmm. Do they have any kind of cultural ways of trying to treat this disease, or anything that they've found to be effective?
Asking around, different people have a variety of different medicines, some of which they can't get here. Just animals are different, plants are different. So things that they might have done back in their homeland, they can't do here anymore. But a lot of it sounds to you like it's probably nonsense. A lot of it is, like they sort of remember folk remedies that their great grandparents knew. And eventually you can find like a dwarf, someone who's been around the whole time since they were driven out, but even their remedies sound a little too homespun to likely be all that effective.
In my discussions trying to find out more about the disease, do I get a sense of what the infection rate is or what the mortality rate is?
Once you the mortality rate sort of the mortality rate, it probably kills about 1 in 4 people it hits. You're not exactly sure that they're counting that properly, because it sounds as if there are a bunch of people who are maybe getting very mild forms of it, and they're not counting those people as being really hit by it. So it might actually be might be somewhat less than the 1/4 you're getting a sense from them on. Rates of infection, though, you're not sure whether or not it's being spread. It's probably not airborne, given that it's not spreading faster than it is. But it seems as if it's also not spreading super easily. It has hit everybody here, but again, it's not like everybody in the city is suffering from it. It's outside of this particular slum where probably 50% of the people are suffering from it. It gets increasingly rare as you move away from it.
What about symptoms? Like, how does the disease manifest?
Well, initially it manifests with fairly high fever. Not enough to like leave you bedridden, but enough that you definitely feel it and aren't functioning well. It doesn't generally involve vomiting, but it eventually proceeds from a fever into tremors, where it's not like a full-blown epileptic episode. You're not having seizures, but you do begin to shake even though you're not feeling cold. And that's throughout the whole body, not just in the limbs. The eyes begin to speckle, where you'll see brown or red or black spots that begin to appear in the eyes. Then you start to see modeling over the skin. If it gets to the point of the modeling of the skin, it's probably going to be accompanied by a level of fatigue that really is keeping people in their beds. And at that point, they assume it's fatal. You hear a couple of isolated cases of people who survived at that point, but not many.
I'm just thinking about Chubby Emu and how he would say that. I'm thinking autonomic nervous system is affected as well as the liver. So are there any like kind of community leaders at all that seem to be rather trusted by the people?
Yeah, you find there are quite a few, but you're directed to an elderly dwarf who actually was one of the first of the refugees to arrive here in the city.
So I approach the dwarf and I say, "Greetings. I hear that you are rather respected in this community."
That is always good to hear. I'm probably the oldest member of the community, so if that translates to respect, I will certainly accept the compliment.
Well, I'm here because I'm just trying to get a sense of this thing that you call the Eastern sickness, or the
We
Eastern
do
fever.
not call it that. Others
Oh,
call it that because they blame the sickness on us.
and what is it that you call it?
We tend to refer to it as the Hai Ching fever.
I see. Hai Ching fever. Does that have a meaning in your native language?
It means speckled, dotted.
Okay, I see. Um, so I can't help but notice that there is a great deal of suffering. Um, while I'm first of all, I want to just say that I'm honored to have been able to be welcomed here. That people have been willing to talk to me about this this disease that seems to be not only plaguing this community, but also it seems to be spreading as well.
Yes,
Um,
I would say that every 100 years or so, it seems as if it recurs. I don't know if this is unusual or not. I was not really paying attention to the spread of the disease last time I remember it coming around, at least not until it claimed my own parents. By then, it was pretty widespread, more widespread than today.
that is interesting. Um, but as I was saying, I greatly appreciate the hospitality that I've received here, and I don't want to leave this community without providing some measure of aid. Uh, I Unfortunately, I'm just in a position where I don't know how best to provide that. I do have some money that I could give, but I wouldn't know who to properly give it to or how it might best be used here.
There are many people who lack for funds, for good food, for clean water. There are many things that money could be spent on. Although I personally would say if you could get us some Hygeia root, that would go a long way for enabling us to create medicine to treat the illness. It's not a complete cure, mind you, but it does alleviate the symptoms and increase the likelihood of survival. Even just a few pounds of Hygeia root would be enough to save probably hundreds of people. But unfortunately, they won't let us bring it in.
What reason do they give for not bringing it in?
Hygeia root has other uses.
I'm assuming illicit uses.
Illegal by the standards of the people of this country, yes. Hygeia root is used to commune with our ancestral spirits, and so it is the spirits that lift the sickness from us.
I see. So, if one were to be able to procure this Hygeia root, where would one harvest it from or find it, especially in the quantities that you need?
To affect everyone in the town would require more Hygeia root than I expect you'll be able to find. Tons of it, probably, but I'm afraid I couldn't tell you where specifically you could find it. It's used in the production of ghost weed, but I don't know where to get that.
I have a suspicion that I might know who to turn to. I will do my best to try and see what action can be taken to allow Hygeia root to come into your community and be used for this medicine. In the meantime, I can offer money that might be able to go towards clean water and food. But once again, I don't know who would be best to give it to.
You could give it to me. However, I would say, in my experience, it would be best for you to save the money to pay for the Hygeia route. It is not inexpensive, and if it were taken from the people who sell it without compensating them, we would never see a steady supply of it.
That's a fair point.
If you were to give the money to me, I would save it for that purpose, except perhaps if some other emergency arose.
I feel awful leaving this community without providing something, at least in the short term.
Looking at your vestments, are you not a member of the church?
I am a paladin of Asheros.
Could you not prevail upon the authorities of the churches to help us?
My relationship is complicated with the actual organization of the church. Certainly, I am happy to do what I can, and I intend to do that once I leave here. But unfortunately, I do not have the authority that I might once have had.
Well, your interest is more than most people have shown, so I do greatly appreciate any effort you make.
Well, save your appreciation for my efforts when they are able to be proven fruitful. In the meantime, might there be some individuals that are in immediate need of perhaps some healing?
There are always people in need of healing if you can spare medicine.
Well, I have some blessings of Asheros that I can provide. Unfortunately, these blessings are limited, which is why it is difficult, because I see so many suffering that it seems not my place to choose who receives these blessings.
I personally believe that if the gods graced you with the ability to heal, then they must have given you the right to select who should be healed. But I defer to your wisdom. I do not live with the burden of deciding such things.
You are very wise. I'm sorry, what is your name again?
My name is Liao Guanting.
Liao Guanting?
Yes.
I am Lusharosi.
Follow me, and I will take you to some people who are ill. You can decide whom to heal and whom to leave.
All right. I will do what I can.
So he could take you to hundreds or thousands of people who are sick.
Yeah. So I am fine with using every single spell slot and healing point I have to try and provide what healing that I can. So in terms of spell slots, I don't know if my first level spell slots would be good for anything, except for maybe Cure Wounds. So I can do 4 Cure Wounds, 3 Lesser Restoration, and then I have 42 points that I can use towards my Lay on Hands, which roughly is about 8.
So you can find, you can find people to use up all of those resources. And they all seem to, upon applying the magic, they seem to all immediately get better. But you can also see there are so many more sick people than healthy people that, cure wounds doesn't necessarily protect you from getting sick again. It
Right.
probably gives you a somewhat of an advantage, but it's not as good as it is not quite as effective as developing a natural immunity to the disease, which would then protect you for a longer period of time.
Mhm.
But you do manage to heal the people who at least you come across. And you see once again that this particular group of people is living in extreme squalor. There are probably other people also living this way, but this is essentially a whole community of about 10,000 people
Mhm.
who are living with next to nothing.
So Leon Quan Chi, was that what it was?
Yeah, Guanting.
Quantum. I will return once I have something that might be useful to this community. I will do my best to try and find this what is it called again?
Oh, you mean the root, the Hygeia
Yeah.
root?
Hygeia root. Okay.
As I said, your efforts are greatly appreciated and do you great credit.
Well, it is important to live as Acheros would himself live if he were walking upon the earth.
I have always found myself to be more closely drawn to the god Moraine, but I greatly appreciate that the gods have sent you to us to help us in our hour of need.
Well, I believe that I know of some individuals in power that might be able to support an effort to be more considerate as to how this Hygeia root is classified and perhaps help prevent further spread of this horrible illness.
I do not know why they ban it, except that, frankly, no one likes Mariliosi being in their cities.
Berliosi?
Yeah, that's the region that these refugees originally came from.
Ah. Well, unfortunately, sometimes it takes a greater impact on those in power before they'll start to listen, and it may be that time has come. So,
Morelios is way over on the eastern side of the map.
okay. Ah, that's right. I remember reading about that. So that's the area that you said was the that's Sahagwin.
Koatoa.
Kotor, yes. So once again, Liao Guanting, I'm Lusharosi, and I do not know if you might be ever in need, but if you are able to get word, I am currently staying with Dom Petronio. So if there are other developments or other ways that I might be able to assist, if you are able to get word there, I'm not sure if you would be able to, but that is where I'll be.
I do not know Dom Petronio. The name is unfamiliar to me. Where does he live?
I'll describe it to her.
So you describe it to him. It's almost like because this whole city is pointed is on a mountain. The inner parts of the city are essentially higher up the mountain. You can almost like point up to it. If that didn't potentially seem a little condescending to point to the rich people who live high above him. But he then says, I don't know that I'll be able to get word to one of the lords of this city. It seems unlikely.
Yes.
I hate to ask, but if you could spare a few silver, I could perhaps, if necessary, hire a messenger to get word to you. But otherwise, I don't know how to send a message that far into the city.
I'll give her 10 gold pieces. Or him. Is it a him or a her?
It's a him.
Okay, it's a him. I'll give him 10 gold pieces. Actually, 11, just to make it me have an even 50 gold pieces.
I'm just glad you're not explaining your reasoning to him.
Yeah.
I hate having to deal with those extra 1 gold piece here or there. I prefer to have round numbers. I was just going to throw it in the gutter, but since you're here.
The rest of my party did tell me I should go to this whorehouse down the way. But
Yes, do you have any recommendations? Perhaps more local.
So
he
is lost for words. That in part that you're giving him this much money, but in part this that anybody could like reach into their pocket and pull out 11 gold as like a normal person in this district could live for a third of a year on 11 gold.
Yeah. As I said, I do have some money, but I want to make sure that it is used wisely to best help this community.
And he bows deeply and says, I will use this gold only for the betterment of my people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have given me a great deal of information that I did not have before. And so I will use it as best I can to help you and your community out of this situation.
He is still holding his bow as you say this.
Is this a custom, a cultural thing? Does Lushrosi have any?
You would be aware that there is some cultural thing to bowing, like how deep you bow and how long you hold it has some cultural significance to it, but it's not it's not commonly known outside of their communities what means what.
Well, Lushrosi will do his best to be respectful, and kind of remain there until he raises his head back, if he does.
Yeah, he does.
May the light of Ashros shine upon you and your brethren.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your efforts and hope to see you again soon.
Yes, likewise. Goodbye.
As you're leaving, looking at your passive perception, you realize that when you handed off the 11 gold to him, there are probably 5 or 6 people in various points around you that took heavy note of that.
So I'm gonna sidle up back to Leon Quanting and say, are these people friends of yours?
And he begins to look around. I do not know these people personally, no.
Perhaps I should walk you back to your home. Or maybe is there a different route that we might be able to take?
There are many routes that lead to the same place. Although I am well known in this community, I do not know these people, but I suspect they know me.
So, Lucerosi, not being one for subtlety, will just announce, I know that you have seen what has gone on here. Why are you staring? If you mean harm to this man, know that you bring about the wrath of Asheros.
Make me an intimidation check. You see, you're not sure that they were super intimidated, but they turn one by one and seem to walk off.
Okay.
I was really hoping Lucerosi would have to fight people and kill them in the poor neighborhood.
So, Leon Quanting, I think it would be best if I walk you home just to make sure that you get there safely. Are there others that you can call upon to perhaps be near in case they should return?
There are several people who I might call on if I needed them. I don't know if I could call on them in an instant if needed.
Perhaps somewhere you can stay that might be in public where those that know you might offer you some protection.
I can stay with my brother's family, my grandson and his wife. I don't wish to bring any trouble down on their heads, but perhaps it is for the best. This is why I have always in my whole life never sought great wealth. It creates problems where no problems were needed.
Yes, I am sorry that I've placed this burden upon you so openly where others might see it. It probably would have been best to do this not out in the open. So,
So he gives you directions and you lead him through the streets to a different house than you originally found him in. And the door opens up. A woman inside, a dwarven woman inside, begins to say something in a language you don't understand. Morelios has a couple of different languages in it. So to you, they kind of all sound vaguely the same. So you're not even sure which one specifically is being spoken. But he thanks you again and she ushers him in. She seems a little badgering, but she seems like it's probably done in a loving way.
Could I possibly, because I know I put him in a difficult situation, could I say a prayer and place a blessing on him in the form of giving him my action points?
Sure. I'd let you spend an action point to give him an action point. So 2 action points.
That is perfect.
So you give away your action points for the days for the session, And that's as good a place to end it as any.
I'm fine with starting with one less action point since it's next session, since it's the end, or neither.
No, I think it's fine. You didn't use them this session. I think it's fine to just use them now for this. It's mostly just a story issue anyway.
Okay.
Plus, an action point isn't going to stop them from killing him. Not one.
Right.
No, but it might help. It could help.
11 gold pieces ruined his life. He was doing good.
I should have left it
That's
at
right. 10. Says D&D according to Ayn Rand.